What's up, everybody? This is GI Railfan here. I would like to welcome you all to my page once again. And today we're going to be talking about the Wabash 4th District. We're not going to be specifically focusing on Gary, Indiana today. In fact, we're going to be talking about the Wyatt Railroad accident of November 23rd, 1973. All right, so I have been obsessed with this accident for a very long time, at least for the past 10 or 11 years or so, ever since I found out that there was a Norfolk and Western accident in Wyatt, or right outside of Wyatt, I should say, at the Wyatt Grain Company. And, the sabotage aspect of it was interesting to me. Like, this was a crime. This just wasn't an accident that happened, just because. Like, this was purposefully done. It was purposefully intentful to crash the train. Now, do I think that these people were purposefully trying to kill people? If you're gonna crash a train, you should already know that there should be a certain degree of casualty, or a risk for there to be casualty, I should say. But the saboteurs were never caught, and the engineer and the brakeman that died in the accident, I believe that, outside of what's being mentioned on the railroad forums, the few topics that there are about this accident, I think, that this case deserves another look. And I've been working on trying to get some information from the government via FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. I've been informed that the information that I'm asking for will take about 2 years to get, which is ridiculous. They have a backlog that is out of this world, so, I didn't want to wait 2 years before I put a video out on this topic, mostly out of fear that someone else would, try it. I think I'm going to be the first to speak about it on YouTube, not that I'm trying to compete with anybody out there. I'm really not, but there's just a lack of information out there. So what this video is going to be covering basically is we're going to be covering what's publicly available as far as, the sequence of events in the accident. The government was gracious enough to hand me a accident report, the full accident report, which is now available publicly on, the FRA website or the NTSB website. I had to file a Freedom of Information Act request to be able to get this accident report. All right, so without further ado here, I'm going to go ahead and drop that down, and we're going to go ahead and get into basically the basic idea of what happened here. So I'm going to open up Google Earth, and I already have it queued up to the town of Wyatt, which would be right here, okay? And it's a very, very, very small, sleepy town. Will be most known for the Palm Sunday tornadic event that took place in 1965, where a tornado came through a lot of states, a record outbreak of tornadoes, set records, and killed a lot of people and destroyed a lot of property. And Wyatt was unfortunately a victim of these tornadoes on that day. On that day, the depot, the railroad depot, the old Wabash Wyatt Railroad Depot here on Bremen Highway, was destroyed. And in its place is this building right here. And we can zoom down to it using Street View here to try to get a better look at the area in question here. Excuse my internet. The internet's kind of slow. All right, so right here, this building, this is where the old Wyatt Depot would have sat. All right, in fact, I got some photos over here I could probably bring up. I should have already had these queued, excuse me. Let me try to see if I could find a picture of the depot for you. I got a lot of random stuff in here. Oh, there we go, there's one of them. This came from one of those books that talk about neighborhoods and things from the past. They're pretty, widespread, well-known books. This guy, John Smith, standing at the Wyatt train depot where the Wabash Railroad came through the town. Like I said, this was the Wabash 4th District. we're looking east, so the side of the building that we're looking at is the west side of the depot, and the south side of the depot, you can see the semaphore signal right here. This line of track, I don't know if you can see my mouse in this area, but this would have been the Wabash main line here. All right, and then this turnoff here would have been the turnoff onto the siding on which the accident occurred back in 1973. This photograph, I'm not really sure when this photograph was taken. I believe it could have been maybe in the mid 50s, maybe. I'm not certain. If anybody knows when this particular photograph was taken, please let me know. I have another photograph of this depot here. There you go. All right, so this would be the east side looking west down the main line. You see the old Wabash train here. This would have been the semaphore signal, but we're looking at it from the east side, and we're looking west. All right, so this would have been the east side of the depot right here, and this building right here, this building would have been across Bremen Highway. All right, and I could be able to show you all that on Google Maps here. We go ahead and turn around. It's this building right here. All right, let's go a little closer. All right, this building right here, you see the garage door, and you see the side of the building there. You go back to the photo and you see that it's the same garage door, the same side of the building. All right, so yeah, so this is what it looked like. You see it doesn't have the train tracks here. Another fact about this is the Wyatt Grain Company. The accident actually happened behind this property here. Okay, it didn't happen on this main strip. It happened further east, back this way. So the main line would have came through here. And back in the 50s and probably into the early 60s, this grain elevator was not there. And I can show you that on some photos that I have queued up. Where are they? It's one of these down here. Okay, yeah. This is a picture from 1951, I believe. In fact, we can zoom out because this is a USGS satellite photograph. Okay. And yeah, 1951, December 9th, 1951. All right. And we're going to go ahead and zoom back down on it. So this is the town of Wyatt as how it looked in 1951. You can see that other grain elevator, that's right here. This would have been on the north side of the Wabash main line. And they would have been standing like back here, or maybe even a little further back here. All right, you can see the old railroad depot because this is 1951. This is before the Palm Sunday tornado event. And you see the old depot is still sitting there. Right there. All right, and then you see the Wabash 4th main line, which would have been right here. It passed like right on the side of the depot, and then there was a siding track that came off of it. And you see these hopper cars here. These hopper cars are sitting on the siding. There's no engine attached to them. All right. And you can see, you go back across here, this would have been Fur Road. All right, this is Fur Road in Wyatt. And then you can see the turnoff for that siding here, which would have been across Fur Road to the east. Not really sure how many yards this is, but the accident report tells us how many yards long that siding actually was. So this would have been the old grain depot, and I believe this grain elevator right here in this area here is this building right here. Okay, and across the street on Bremen Highway here, I believe this was a lumber yard. I'm not entirely certain about that. I think the accident report said it was a lumber yard. I haven't memorized the accident report. Okay, I think I read somewhere that this was a lumber yard, maybe in one of the legal dispositions that's available online that most of you probably seen. You know, I think this was a lumber yard, and there was a siding track here that ran adjacent to the lumber yard and actually also crossed crossed the street here, crossed Bremen Highway here, and was able to access the property, behind this grain elevator to connect to the siding. And I'm not sure where exactly that actual siding was. Sometimes you could look at the street here and try to make out, where tracks could have been, but it really looks like, let me get out of street view real quick. It really looks like that all traces of the siding that ran back here has been erased. All right. But if you look at Google Maps here, you can still see traces of where the old Wabash main line used to be. But here on the Wyatt Grain Company property here, all right, you can see that almost all traces of the rail line in this area has been obliterated. Only to the most savvy eye would you be able to really pick up where something used to be. Like, I know that there was a siding installed on the north side of the Wabash main, which would have been here, okay? And the siding track actually went to this grain elevator. I think they installed it in the mid to late 60s. So in this 1950s photograph, that grain elevator is not here, and that other siding track that came off of it is not here. All right, but if we go to the one from the 70s, I'm bringing up the same one again. We go back to the one from the 70s. This one is unbelievable. The 1951 picture is a better resolution than the picture from the 1970s picture. I think this was a 77, so this would have been after the accident occurred, but the Wabash was still running in 1977 through Wyatt. I don't think it was ripped up until about 82 or 83. Okay, so it still had some years to go when this picture was taken. And you can see here on this property right here, you see this little line here. If I zoom in, it's not going to make the resolution any better, but you might be able to pick up that line. That would have been the north siding that was built after 1968 or during 1968. Maybe even it was in the 60s, okay? And maybe I have it in my notes that I'm going to read to you all. All right, so the main line, you see the main line is here. You see the siding track coming off here, going to the grain elevator here. You can't really see the other siding that came across the street here. And I'm pretty sure that the siding that the accident happened on was still here in 1977. I wasn't born until 1986, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I'm definitely no expert on the town of Wyatt. I've never been there in my life. I'm just deducing things based on what I've read and what I've seen. Yeah, so you see, if you go across Fur Road here, actually in this picture, wow, I'm looking at it a little closer, it doesn't look like that siding is there anymore. But like I say, this is a very low resolution photo, and details of that nature, would be impossible to pick up. All right, so this would have been east, this is west, this is west, this is east, this is the town of Wyatt. This is Wyatt Grain Company. All right, so now let's talk about the accident. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up my notes here. I was going to read all of this, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to just skip through it, okay? On a cool late autumn evening in 1973, in a small town of Wyatt, Indiana, a terrible tragedy took the lives of two Norfolk and Western Railroad employees. There were a number of factors that led up to this accident: company negligence, the weather, suspected malicious tampering of a railroad siding switch. These things came together to leave the town of Wyatt forever scarred and haunted for the next 40 years. Like many of you, I went through the majority of my life never hearing of the accident in Wyatt. However, my never-ending interest in the Wabash 4th District eventually led me to it. I watched a documentary on television one day. It was about the 1995 Palo Verde derailment on Amtrak Sunset Limited passenger train. Someone removed the 3-foot section of track on the bridge, not an easy feat, and rigged the wiring to trick the signals. A makeshift wire was linked to the rails to fool the engineer that all was clear. The engine made it across, yet a portion of that train derailed behind it, plunging multiple passengers into a dry riverbed, one person was killed. All right, now the reason why I even brought up this Amtrak Sunset Limited, because that was an act of sabotage. Somebody sabotaged the tracks of the Sunset Limited in 1995. Okay, and it resulted in the death of some passengers. But in the case of Wabash, it actually resulted in the deaths of railroad employees. And like the Palo Verde accident, it was a crime. And this crime has never been solved. No one has ever come forward to claim responsibility for, sabotaging the switch. All right, so let's talk about the switch for a minute. This is Fur Road, and let me bring up the 1951 picture again, which would have been this 43 here. All right, so this is Fur Road here. And you can see in the 1950s picture, I'm using this one because it has a better resolution. You're able to see the turn off for that switch easier here. And this is actually a good photo to reference because the Wabash 4th District was not maintained. I believe the accident report stated that the tracks hadn't been updated or repaired in 24 years by the time of the accident in 1973. So we're talking about in the late 1940s was the last time there was some major construction or major track maintenance on the Wabash 4th District, at least in this area. This 1952 picture is a great representation of, what the accident site looked like. Okay, now the switch was here. You can barely make it out. You can't even see it. If I zoomed in closer, you wouldn't be able to make it out, but I can see where the switch is. Okay, so the switch would be back here. All right, and you see it comes off here. This was a number 11 turnout. And you see the siding goes all the way back here to where these grain hoppers are parked. And I'm glad that the grain hoppers are parked here because it really shows, how the grain company operated, at least at this time. By the time the accident occurred, like I said, it was a second siding over here in this area. This siding here pretty much stayed the same all the way up until 1973, from the date that this photograph was taken. I know this to be Fur Road. This is Fur Road. So we're going to go back to the map. You can see we have Fur Road right here in front of us. Okay. Now the turnoff for the switch was back here. And you can kind of see, the area, the vegetation kind of shows you the outline of the right-of-way. For the Wabash 4th District. So you can look at this map here, look at this area here east of Fur Road, and actually bring that picture back up, and you can see that it is the same shape of where the turnoff switch for that siding was, I should say, excuse me. And that siding came all the way into Wyatt Grain Company's property. There was a second switch that I mentioned already over here at the depot. All right, and I already showed you the pictures of that. I'll bring it up again for you so y'all can get a better. That's not really a good picture, but it shows the turn off here, and you see the Cephalomoore signal there. Let's go back down. There you go. All right, so you see in this picture here, you can see the turn off for the second switch. So this would have been the Western switch. I haven't been able to find any photographs of the Eastern switch, the switch in question that the train hit when it came down the siding and crashed into the back of those hopper cars. Let's talk a little bit about the accident. I'm gonna skip a whole lot of stuff here. If you all are interested in, the comings and goings of what was occurring, I'll be more than happy to go over it with you in another video if that's what y'all want. But right now, I'm gonna go ahead and skip it. Excuse my spelling errors. This is just preliminary notes. I will be fixing these when I actually do the real video. All right. So here we go. We're gonna start it here at 5:38 p.m. All right. So 5:38 p.m. on November 23rd, 1973. By now, the sky is a heavy dark blue, rapidly approaching nautical twilight. The faintest of stars pierce the ever-darkening sky. We are 2 minutes from impact, nearly an hour outside of Millersburg, which was east of Wyatt. The engineer of number 2917 sits on the north side or the right side of the cab with his brakeman, who sits on the south side or the left side of the cab. The sky barely able to illuminate anything on the ground. The lamp would look dark except for what is illuminated by the locomotive's powerful 800-watt running lamp. The running lamp at the front of the engine is designed to illuminate anything ahead of it of at least 800 feet. I butchered that sentence, but basically I think it was an 800-watt lamp. It being designed to illuminate anything from a distance of 800 feet. I don't know about that off the top of my head. I have to go back into the accident report and bring that up, which I do have down here in this PDF document. I'll bring it up in a minute. When the train was about 2,879 feet from the switch, the red reflector on the banner was scarcely visible, and no determination of that switch configuration could be made, meaning the engineer couldn't tell if the switch was red or green. At 1,700 feet, I'll just say 1,700 feet, the switch banners were distinctly visible, yet there was still no determination of its configuration. Once the train was about 966 feet away from the signal was very visible, meaning the engineer should have recognized the collision was imminent. Now you think about that. You go from the signal being seen at 2,800 feet, 2,879 feet, and then it's narrowed down again to about 1,700 feet. But you couldn't make out a determination to determine whether the signal was red or green until the train was about 966 feet away from the signal. That is crazy. So the engineer should have recognized the collision was imminent. However, that's not what happened. The engineer didn't notice the easternmost switch at Wyatt was in the wrong configuration until his train was at 767 feet away from the switch. So now we're narrowing it down even further, where he should have been able to distinguish what the signal was at 966 feet, but the engineer didn't see the signal until he didn't see what color the signal was or see what the configuration of the switch was until he was about 767 feet away from it. It wouldn't matter at this point if the engineer caught it at 800 feet or 760 feet, because the train would have needed at least 1,479 feet at its current speed to come to a complete stop, which was about 32 to 35 miles per hour, by the way. This was obviously not enough to avoid a collision. Once the engineer spotted that the switch was in the wrong alignment, he immediately put his train into emergency. However, the train brakes don't work like brakes on a car. The train does not stop or slow down immediately. The train has gargantuan mass, and even though it's traveling at 32 miles per hour, the inertia of all of that mass means it would take time before the brakes properly respond and actually slow the train down. The train did slow down, however, but not by much. Okay, so what happened was the engineer saw the signal was in the wrong configuration. All right. And the engineer hit emergency, and he hit emergency before he hit the switch. Then the train, while it is in the process of braking, decelerating extra slowly, it hits the switch, gets off of the main line, and gets onto the siding. The same siding where the grain hopper cars are sitting. All right. So we're going to go back to my notes here, okay? The train, brakes squealing and sparking, screamed into the siding, rapidly approached the parked grain hopper cars on the siding. At 30 miles per hour, it took extra 2917 11 seconds to travel approximately 198 feet. And at 198 feet, the accident occurs. Now, the accident occurred at 5:40 p.m. approximately. Engine 2917 slammed into a grain hopper car at 30 miles per hour. The heavier locomotive scooped up the fully loaded grain hopper car. The mass of the hopper cars behind it helped buffer the impact in a way that allowed the hopper car to be launched into the cab. It said, okay, I got it right. Into the cab of 2917. Steel twisted and glass shattered. The cab was completely and utterly shredded. Both the engineer and the brakeman were killed instantly, crushed by the impact forces and sheer weight of a hopper car. The impact and inertia of all of this debris suddenly crashing caused the rest of the train behind engine 2917 to derail. Well, not the rest of the train, but it was 3 engines on this train. It was 2917, and then I got the other 2 listed up here. I'm not going to look for it, but they all derail. All 3 engines derail, and some of the cars that they were hauling also derail. I got the engines listed here. Okay, engine 3471, the second of the 3 engine lash up, derailed and toppled onto its side, sliding down an embankment. And engine 694 was derailed, but it remained upright. And at least 1 freight car of extra 2917 was destroyed. So we're talking about 3 whole locomotives being derailed by part grain hopper cars. Can you imagine the types of dynamic forces involved in this accident? Like, those engineers didn't have a chance hitting those brakes at the location that they hit the brakes. You know, it was too late for them. They didn't have a chance. There was no way to stop the train. No way to stop the train. If you jump off of the train, you risk injury. You risk killing yourself jumping off of the train. So I don't know why they didn't, make a jump for it. I think if it were me, I would have tried to make a jump for it. I would have took that risk and made a jump for it. And arguably you still maybe could have gotten hurt or maybe even killed doing that. But it beats running into the back of some damn hopper cars. And these hopper cars, they get heavy, man. And when they're fully loaded with grain like that, they're very heavy and they're not moving. It's like the train ran into a brick wall going 32 miles an hour. It crushed the front of the cab like a tin can. I have a photograph of this, but it's very small. I haven't been able to find any photographs of the cab except for one in this very, very, very small picture here. You can see right here. You see the way that this is the engine. What was the name of it? 2917. I'm sorry, 2917. Right here. This is 2917. Okay. You see how crushed up it is? Look at that. Anybody that was sitting inside of this engine, there's absolutely no way that you would have been able to survive this. And I think I read on a forum somewhere that some rescue workers actually found the engineer's hand still on the brake, but there was no body attached to the hand. Now, I don't know if this is true or not because that wasn't listed in the accident report, nor was it listed in any of the newspaper articles that I've read. If that was true, you can imagine what the rest of the body looked like. Just imagine that. Put yourself in the shoes of that engineer. Some asshole I said I was going to talk about the signal. I never did. The signal, what happened with the signal was, I could freestyle this part. All right. Sometime on that day, November 23rd, 1973, somebody or a group of people actually went to the switch, would have been located in this area here. All right. Let me bring it closer. Right in the middle of this box here, the switch. Okay. They actually went to that switch and there was a lock on the mechanism to move the train. My terminology for that, it's escaping me right now because I'm kind of freestyling this, but there was a lock on the switch. The lock was broken. Some reports said that the lock was shot off. Other people said it looked like a blunt instrument was used, maybe an axe or, a hammer or something. Whatever was used, that lock was broken off of the switch and the lock was discarded down the tracks. Now, there was a cover plate on top of the gearbox that operated the mechanisms for the switch. The bolts on the cover plate were taken off, and the cover plate was removed, and someone picked up railroad gravel. Well, actually, before we even get to the railroad gravel part, they set the switch. After I don't know if they did it before they took the cover plate off or after they took the cover plate off, but before they put the railroad gravel inside of the gearbox, they illegally manipulated the position of the switch so that westbound traffic, would unexpectedly hit the siding instead of staying on the main line. All right. Somebody picked up railroad gravel and put it inside of the gears and just basically just covered all of the gears, with this railroad gravel to prevent the switch from being able to be put back in its correct position. After they put the railroad gravel inside of the gearbox, they put the cover back on top of the gearbox and replaced the bolts. And no one seen anybody there. There was a train that passed by earlier that day, and the switch was in its normal position. I think I have it here. No one knows, but sometime between 9:15 a.m., the last time a train passed by this area where the siding was without incident, it was an eastbound train. So somewhere between 9:15 a.m. that day until the time of the accident, 5:40 p.m., someone or a group of someones committed a murderous act of sabotage. So the last train to pass through this area that day on November 23rd was 9:15 a.m. And in between 9:15 a.m. and the time of the accident, somebody manipulated the switch. Somebody manipulated the switch here and put the switch off of its proper alignment. And nobody seen, according to what I've read, nobody saw who did it. No one saw anybody back there playing on the tracks. Nobody saw anybody walking around with tools. And, of course, because it was sabotage, it's a federal crime, they called the FBI in, and the FBI was unable to determine who was responsible for manipulating this switch. I also filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the FBI, but who knows how long it's going to be before they respond to me with that. I'm not even looking forward to that one. It might be 5 years before I hear back from the FBI. But I did hear back from the National Archives, and like I said earlier, it said 2 years before I get the report files from that. And I'm not really sure how to speed that process up, or even if you could speed that process up. I'm not sure if you could do that, So I'm going to be patiently waiting for this information to come in, but I just wanted to discuss this accident and put it out into the ether, that, somebody is trying to figure out exactly what went on here. Now, there was an article way back in the day about this accident, and I remember reading this article with the South Bend Tribune. I think that's what that newspaper is called. They had a 4 or 5 part series detailing what happened in this accident, and it disappeared. The newspaper does not have any traces of this particular series left, and I would love to get my hands on that series. I guess I'm gonna have to reach out to the author or reach out to the newspaper to try to see if I could get my hands on those. And if I could get my hands on those, I'll come back and update the video. If any of you, know I could get my hands on that type of story, on this particular story, I would love for you to get in contact with me on my railroad blog on Facebook at GI Railroad Blog or Gary Railroad Blog. Okay. And, get in contact with me if you know where I can find this 4 part or 5 part series about this accident. Please, I am desperately looking for it. But anyway, this really traumatized the city for a long time. And it is an accident that is remembered, by the folks that lived there at the time, and to a lot of railroaders, because there were other instances of sabotage in the Midwest. I think the day before this accident, or even on the same day, there was another incident in Ohio where somebody sabotaged a railroad switch and caused a derailment. But I'm not sure if anybody was killed in that accident or not. There wasn't really a lot of information available about that particular incident. And there's slightly more information available about this Wyatt incident, but not by much. All right. The most I've been able to get is this accident report. All right. So I do have this accident report here. They called it the Shepherd Doc for my last name, And they were gracious enough to make a photocopy of this and put it in PDF format and email it to me. So most of the information that I know about the science of an accident in a general way, because this is a very general accident report, it goes into depth about some things, but the things that I want to know about, it doesn't go into depth about that at all. I have an accident report here, you know what I'm saying? And it sheds a lot of light about, the accident, but in a very soulless way, very methodical, very scientific government type of way. You know what I'm saying? There is some information in here that is very interesting. You see, it talks about the number 11 turnout on the east end of the Wyatt siding. It was a Raycor Type E 110 high target switch, with a ground-mounted hand-thrown lever, and that was the lever that the lock was on, that somebody popped the lock on and threw the lock down the track. There was a 15-inch square red painted banner attached near the top of the vertical shaft of the switch stand. The banner would display the red aspect to any approaching train when the signal was lined for the siding. So, in a proper environment, the engineer of Extra 2917 should have seen that red signal. But I've read again on the forums, and like I said, the forums are not an educational source as far as I'm concerned. They are a guide. They could be telling you some truth, or they could be telling you something that they heard. They don't provide any sources, and don't really take you anywhere where you need to go in order to read up on some of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, a guy like me probably would never get a chance to go to Wyatt to talk to anybody out there. You know what I'm saying? So I have to dig for this stuff on my own. And a lot of the time, the people on those forums are very gracious and very nice, very giving, and they're willing to provide links and sources to articles or maps or whatever the case may be. But for this Wyatt incident, there's nothing. There's nothing. So I just really wanted to bring that back to life, and this might not interest everybody, but this was an unsolved murder. Railroad men lost their lives, in the most horrific and most violent way possible, being crushed by your own locomotive and being crushed by a grain hopper car. I can only hope that their death was quick, because that is a terrible, terrible, terrible way to die. And that happened right on the Wabash 4th District in 1973, the day before Thanksgiving. And contrary to popular belief, this was not the reason why the Wabash 4th District was ripped up. All right, this accident was not a reason. All right, it was a couple of days after all the debris was cleared up. This area of the Wabash 4th District was back up and running again. It stayed up and running until the early 80s. All right, so this accident was not the sole reason why. I don't even think it was any reason why, the Wabash 4th was ripped up. I think that was just some pure business stuff. But we'll go into that another day. All right, so I hope you all learned something about this accident here. And the good town folks of Wyatt, I'm pretty sure that they remember this accident. And if you know anybody that lives in Wyatt who'd be able to give me some information or be willing to talk to me about this accident, help me out a little bit, because I am trying to present to you all a story, and hopefully by doing this, maybe we could get somebody, to confess, or maybe we could jog somebody's memory out there who might have seen somebody playing around back here in this area east of 1st Street where the turnoff for the siding was. All right, so this video was not meant to go all the way in depth, you know what I'm saying? And if you all are interested in that, I'll make a more in-depth video and really go through all of my materials and really dig down with all of the information that I have, and present, a great story. But I just wanted to, let everybody know that this happened. All right, and I'm on the case and I'm working on it. I'm obsessed with it. Get in contact with me on my railroad blog on Facebook. Get in contact with GI Railfan. Let's have a conversation about this. All right, you all take it easy. Have a great day, and I'll see you all later.